Okay, the last thing I wanted to talk about was performance, which is the big thing we want to talk about on hard drives. We've already talked about the basic hooking up of hard drives, but the research you're going to do is going to be about hard drives and what hard drives you should buy, or what hard drives you would recommend, and I'll get into that or show you the assignment for that in at the end of this, or at least have it linked right below the video on Moodle for you to read it. So I wanted to talk about hard drive performance. You're going to have to do a little reading. There's going to be some links in the video to some things I'd like you to go look at or like you to go read, and also have those links in the assignment itself. But I wanted to talk about hard drive performance and not just have you read about it. So when we're talking about hard drive performance, we're talking about how quickly a hard drive can access the data that we've got on our computer. And the faster it can access the data, the faster it boots to the operating system, the faster programs load. So the speed that a hard drive accesses data is really important to us. So the first thing about accessing data is the time it takes to access the data. The time it takes from when the CPU requests information till it gets the information. So that's the access time. And there's a couple things that really influence the access time that we've got on our hard drive. Now, the first thing that influences access time is our rotational speed. Okay. Traditional hard drives, like we talked about before, spin. We've got our platters that are spinning around in a circle. And those traditionally, speeds today, are at 5,400 revolutions per minute, or 7,200 RPM, or 10,000 RPM, and now we're getting up to 15,000 RPM. And I will tell you that I'm going to draw a line in the sand there. The 5,400 and the 7,200 are traditional speeds or current speeds for desktop machines. When you get up to 10,000 and 15,000, we're talking about server rangers, we're talking about really expensive hard drives, or much more expensive hard drives that are traditionally saved for servers. So the faster that revolves, now you realize that's spinning once it's sped up, and you've got your head there that reads the data. The faster that's spinning, the more often the data goes past the head. So the faster it can find it or seek it, and the faster it gets transferred out as well. Because if I can get to the data faster, then I can transfer the data faster. So rotational speed has a big impact on how fast we access our data on a traditional spinning hard drive. And I keep saying traditional spinning hard drive because really now we have two types. We have a rotational traditional hard drive, and we have solid state drives. And we're going to look at a video on solid state drives and a comparison between traditional and solid state drives in just a minute. But I wanted you to know, first of all, the rotational speed has a direct impact on the time it takes to access data. So the first thing that we look at when we see those is access time and seek time. And when I go and look at a advertisement or specifications on a hard drive, when I go down and look at them and I look at those specs, I'm going to see that pretty usually clearly written out. Okay, so I can see down here that I've got my access time, my seek time written down here is slightly less than or under 12 milliseconds. Okay, so that's how fast it's going to take this drive to find the data on the drive. So when a request is made of data, it's going to take average of just under 12 milliseconds. So consider 12 milliseconds to find the data. Okay, and that's directly related to the speed at which that's rotating. Okay, so we've got that seek time that it takes to get there, and then we've got transfer rates. Now, the way a hard drive works is we've got, and this is not necessarily a scale drawing here, so you're going to have to bear with me a little bit. So I've got that hard drive here that is spinning And we've got our data being read on. And as that hard drive spins and our data gets read off of it from our seeker head, right? That data goes out to a buffer, okay? And it's memory on the hard drive. And so all hard drives have some size of buffer or memory where that data is stored before it's transferred out on the cable at some transfer rate that must be the same for the motherboard and the hard drive. So if the hard drive supports a transfer rate, the motherboard must also support that transfer rate for the data to transfer at that speed. So I've got a rotational rate and I've got that seek time to take into consideration. How fast does it find the data? And then I've got the buffer, and how much of a buffer, how much can it hold? Because no matter how fast the seek time is, if the buffer is not big enough to hold the data, it's got to wait for the buffer to be cleared out for it to get more information into the buffer before it goes out to the motherboard, to the PC off of the hard drive. So I've got those things to take into account too. So when I look back at this advertisement, and this is a large cache today, 64 megabytes. So that hard drive has 64 meg of memory on it where it can store information while it's waiting to be transferred out to the motherboard. Okay, so that's the second part of that equation that you're looking at when we're looking at the speed. Okay, and then the last part of it is the transfer speed itself. How fast can the information transfer? Okay, so when I'm looking at transfer speeds, I have to recalibrate. I'm way off here. As I'm writing, I'm nowhere close to where my pen is, which you can't see, but it's driving me a little bit crazy. So we talked last class about the difference between PATA and SATA, okay? And we talked about how out at PATA rates we went from 33 to 66 to 100 up to 133 megabytes of information per second. And SATA started off at 150 megabytes per second. Okay, that was the original SATA. Now SATA 2 brought us up to 300 megabytes per second. And SATA 3 now says that it can do it at 600 megabytes per second. Okay? So the speed at which data transfers now, and you can see why we're trying to get away from all of the PATA drives, because the fastest PATA drive that we're looking at transferred data far slower, and really the ones we're looking at now, most of ours are SATA 2 drives, and most of our motherboards are SATA 2 motherboards. Some of them may be SATA 1. So even if they're SATA 1, they're faster than the fastest PATA drive. If they're SATA 2, they're over double, 2.5 times faster than the fastest PATA drive. And if they're SATA 3, if you actually got this transfer rate, which has been questioned by a lot of different articles, then you're talking 5 times the transfer rate of data. So when we look at our hard drive, we have to look at how fast it can get the data, the seek time, the time to find the data on the drive itself, and then the transfer rate, or how many megabits per second it can, megabytes a second that it can transfer. And so it's looking at 600 megabytes. You also see that it's written as 6 gigabits per second. Which is misleading. It's not gigabytes per second, it's gigabits per second, or 600 megabytes per second really is the rated speed of those. So we're looking at 150, 300, and 600 megabytes per second. When we look at this one, this particular drive says 6 gigabits per second, so it's 5 times faster than the fastest SATA. And this one, in fact, is a hybrid drive. It's a combination of a solid state and a regular one. I'm going to pull up another one right now just to show you a regular hard drive. Let's just go to a normal one and look at some normal speeds for a normal drive. This is a 500 gig drive, and it's saying 6 gigabits per second. Okay, so it's 600 megabytes per second on that. And it's a fairly normal drive. We look at this one, it's got a lower cache. The cache is 16 meg. The capacity on this one is 500 gig. The rotational rate of this one is 720 RPM. And what we want to know is the seek time. And we can't find it here. And my point bringing one up is that just because it's not on the Newegg site does not mean that you're not going to be able to find that information. Again, while you're doing research on these, you need to be able to just pull it up and go to the Seagate site. And there is on Tiger Direct too. Let's look at the Tiger Direct site and see if they had it up there, since it's not taking us straight to what we want. Anyway, let's see if their specifications are a little bit better, and they are not any better. So let's see if we can find it on Seagate's site itself. I'm clicking down here to try to get to it. I went back to the overall Seagate site, not about that particular drive. Let's see, drive only specs there. If I had looked a little bit more. Let's see if we can find the cache again. On this one was only 16 meg of cache. So we're looking way down here. And let's see if it gives us any of the data that we're looking for, and it doesn't. I don't see it all. Let's see if it's on their data sheet. There we go. Seek time is, looks like, I think this is it right here. It's hard to see at the size I've got, but it looks like 11 millisecond on the read and 12 on the write. And then it says average data rate is 125. And let's see if I can get it in. Zoom in a little bit more and see if I can get a little bigger. There we go. Now we can read it on our screen. Average data rate for read and write in meg is actually, even though it says, you know, that it does 600 meg per second, you can see that really the average rate, make sure I get the right column, average data rate to read is 125, and for a sustained file is 144. So those transfer rates up here, where it says it's doing 6 gigabits or 600 meg of megabytes per second, it's not really what you're getting out of it. You're getting far less than that out of it. So the only way to see that is to dig down and actually look at some of these spec sheets when you're doing a comparison and as you're doing your write-up on those. So I wanted to make sure we went through it and looked at that so you saw really what the difference was there in that. Now when we look at solid state drives, and I want to pull up a solid state drive as well here, The difference between a solid-state drive and a traditional drive is that we're basically reading out of memory. On a solid-state drive, in fact, I've got a really good video up from Seagate, if I still have it up. Let's see if I've got it. Nope, it's not this one. Let's see if I can find... Oh, there we go. This is a pretty good comparison. I'm going to go ahead and go full screen and hope that the audio shows up. If not, I'll try to post the...
Welcome to the Samsung solid-state drive
link to it.
Today we will compare a Samsung solid-state drive against a traditional hard disk drive.
Realize this is comparing against a floppy drive, or I mean a laptop drive, which traditionally runs slower. They look at 5400 and 4200.
Which makes them 50% lighter than the conventional HDD, not to mention faster, more vibration resistant, and much more reliable. Most of us deal every day with slow notebook boot ups. Let's see if Samsung SSD can save us time and boot up faster than the HDD. And boot up now. Only 36 seconds for Samsung SSD, and we're up and running. Now we'll wait for our HDD to finish.
And I will tell you, our times when we tested solid-state drives are pretty comparable to this. The network boots slightly slower. We got 43 seconds on our machines, but it's pretty darn close. And we saw a measurable difference between solid states and spinning drives. Like I said, though, he's comparing a solid-state drive. I realize they're both 2.5 inch in width because, like I said in class, all solid states are 2.5, just like all laptop drives are 2.5. Realize that desktop drives and server drives are faster than laptop drives. Laptop drives are always slower. So a lot of times people will say, hey, I'm going to put a solid state in my desktop computer. How much faster it will be? It will still boot faster. It will be faster than it was, but it's not a dramatic difference as you see with a laptop drive, which may be a 4200 speed laptop drive they're testing on.
A friend has sent you a sizable 25 megabyte file. How long will that take to open? On your mark, get set, launch. The Samsung SSD is up in 4 seconds. And the HDD, still working. The Samsung solid-state drive launches large computer files up to 3 times faster. Score another victory for SSD.
Okay, I'm going to shrink this down for a second while we get back to some of the other things that we're going to talk about in access time and looking at the comparison here. So looking at this one, we know that we had, again, 12 millisecond access times, which is about average on a 7200 RPM drive. If we looked at a 5400 RPM drive, we're going to see a slower time. Let's see if we can find one that's 5400 down here. Look at that, 7200, 10,000. It doesn't even, we're going to go to under 7200. 5400. Okay, so here's a 5400 normal, and this is also a 500 gig drive, so it's a good one to use as a comparison. Although it says it's a notebook drive, but we'll go ahead and look at the access time, which again is not listed on here. So we're going to go ahead and Google it and see if we can find it on Western Digital's website. I'm going to zoom in again here to 125 and see if we can read it a little better. And see if I can find, I'm going to go a little bigger so it shows up on the projection a little better. And we were looking at the 500 gig LUC right here. And let's see, the cache is still a 16 meg cache. It's saying 3 gigabits per second for a sustained 147 megabytes per second, which is actually faster sustained than the other one that we saw. And let's see if we can find, there's our power, cycles, read errors. I'm still looking for the speed there. And if somebody sees it, go ahead and shout that out for the rest of the class, because I do not see, I see the power for read and write, the temperature for read and write. I do not see the actual speed for read and write for those. Let's see if it's further down. Oh, that's the end of the document there. Let's see if I can. And without that information, it's really hard to do a logical comparison between drives without having a realistic access time on there. And I don't see it on this website either. Let's see if we can pull up another one that's not a notebook one anyway. There we go. Internal hard drive, that's got 64 meg of cache. And that one's right here, 5.1, or I'm sorry, 8.5 milliseconds on the seek time. Now, that's not, it's a 5900, but it's also got more cache. Let's see if we can find one. Average latency 5.1, 5400. And it's a notebook drive. And really, looking at these 5400 drives, like I said, generally notebook drives are slower, and that's because they're more reliable if they're spinning at a slower speed. Let's see if I can get any access time. Latency is 5. That's how much time it takes before it gets around to it, not necessarily exact comparison on there, so it's probably not a good straight line comparison between the two. Now let's look at other hard drives, though. Let's look at solid state drives. And I know he just mentioned how much faster it is. Let's go ahead and go a 500 gigabyte solid state drive. Now, we know that we just saw it for around $50 for a drive. That's the laptop one. Let's see if we can find the other. Okay, so here's our one. We saw $59 for a 500 gig drive, and this is where you're going to see the big difference is $409 for a Samsung solid state drive. That's 500 gig. Here's another one, 324, and it looks like getting now that's 360 gig. So we're going to go ahead and go with this one as our least expensive one. Now, they're not going to show the information the same way because the access of it is almost uncomparable because the fact is there's no spinning disk, so you're not going to have the same kind of access time that you do with that. And so that's why you're seeing here that it can do a sustained read of 540 megabytes per second because it's not trying to find the data the same way with a head going over a platter. It can sustain and get data out much faster off of a solid state drive, and that's why you see those load times so much quicker off the video. And those were relatively small files. When you start talking about large games or programs, you're going to see them happen much faster. Let's see if we can get back to that video. This is one of the places that solid states really win, especially in a laptop, is the fact that they don't sustain damage. Now, you're not going to do this to your laptop. The point is that if you jar your laptop just a little bit while it's running, you can cause irreversible damage to the drive itself. Solid state drives have nothing like that, and with too much vibration, the drive simply fails, whereas with the solid state drive, it doesn't even know that it's being shook. So that's one of the advantages of a solid state drive as well. And I'm going to fast forward through some of this because you can watch this on your own if you want to. But they're going to show us also that because of the power consumption that a traditional hard drive has over a solid state drive, that you're going to last longer. And this is their comparison, is that it's going to last about 20% longer with battery because of the fact that the solid state drive's not turning a motor to get to the access. So the drive is going to last much longer, or the laptop battery is going to last much longer because the fact that it's not pulling, or the SSD is not pulling power like a traditional hard drive is. So how much longer does your battery last?
Conventional hard drives score another victory for Samsung SSD.
And obviously it depends on the laptop and it depends on the battery that you've got in it. But in any case, a laptop will last longer with a solid state drive versus a traditional hard drive in it.
Let's review our findings now, shall we? SSD is the clear winner.
Obviously, Samsung wants you to buy a solid state drive. They sell traditional drives as well. But their solid state drives, as we saw here, are not inexpensive. But they're also rated among the best of the solid state drives. Samsung has a great reputation right now with their solid state drives, and their reviews have been really, really well. This drive right here happens to be what runs our Moodle server. So when you're comparing drives or when you're writing your review, you really can't straight line compare a solid state drive versus a traditional drive. Is it a fast traditional drive? Is it a fast solid state drive? Is it reliable? You're going to have to go and read through the reviews. You can see this Samsung drive right here has a 5-star review, which you're not going to see a lot of places. That kind of great reviews. Look at the reviews right there. 932 are 5 stars out of the 1,000 reviews. They are phenomenally faster, but they're also still prohibitively expensive in the larger size ranges. But in the laptop sizes or desktops, when you've got a network to store to, solid state drives are really something that here at National Trail we're doing a lot. That's why all the teachers' drives are now solid state drives. All the staff have solid state drives, I should say. And many of the laptops are migrating to smaller solid state drives where you guys are saving everything on the H drive anyway. So why not have the faster access time and the longer battery life? And longer battery life means less power consumption over the long term too, because if you don't dissipate the battery, you don't have to charge the battery. So that's one of the things we're looking at as well. So as you do your comparisons and read your reviews, there are going to be a number of things that you look at on there, and I've gone through some of them. I want to make sure you understand your job on a research thing like this is to look stuff up that you don't understand. And if that means you need to go to Wikipedia and, let me see if I got it up, there we go, and read about access time and seek times, rotational latency and transfer rates. It's just not really that long of an article, and you can breeze through it really fast, and you can see right here some of the times that are related to how much faster the spindle speed affects the time it takes to find the data. And you're going to see that the difference between 5400 and 7200, you know, it's 25% faster, so it's going to find it 25% quicker. So you want a higher rotational rate. The downside of higher rotational rates is higher power consumption, hotter drives, especially in large data warehouse locations. The faster the drive spins, the more they have to cool the computer down. So faster drives create a lot more heat, which is why the server rooms get so much hotter than other locations in the building. So I want you to read through that, and then after you're done with this video, you need to read through the assignment itself, and then you'll be doing 2 blog posts on one for a solid state drive and one for a traditional drive for your PCs that you have. Oh, and I should point that out again, even though I kind of briefly said it. If you've got a computer motherboard that says it's SATA 2.0 or SATA 2 compliant, that means that if you get a SATA 3 drive, it's still only going to transfer at SATA 2 speeds. Okay. Likewise, if you have a motherboard that does SATA 3 and you get a SATA 2 drive, you're going to transfer at SATA 2 speeds. Okay. It's going to transfer because you've got your hard drive and you've got your motherboard, and like we know, we've got that one cable that goes between the two, and the data will only transfer at the slowest speed. So if this is a 2 and this is a 3, it's going at 2, SATA 2, which is our 300 megabytes per second, which you will also see written as 3 gigabits per second. Okay, so realizing that those not exactly a 1-to-1, 300 megabytes is not 3 gigabits. Okay, but it's close enough, and that's how they do this. So you need to look at that information and make sure you have all that in your review on your WordPress blog post that you're going to be doing for this one. And that's all I've got for today to get you started on your project. Please read through the project next and start doing your research, and then do some nice, good blog posts. Make sure you're looking at the rubric as you go. Thanks.